says you all have to reduce your output because we're going to save the planet. Guess what? Price of coal goes up for all of them. Defendants believe that the concern for the climate gives them some sort of a license to suppress competition is mistaken. The antitrust laws aren't excused because you think you're saving Mother Earth. They have substantially lessened competition in the entire market, and they've done it intentionally. Blackrock, State Street, Vanguard, you've heard these companies. They're now getting hit with a lawsuit courtesy of Texas, and Texas isn't alone. They're joined by 10 other states from across the nation to sue them, saying that these companies that are massive, massive conglomerates that control tons of power across not only America but the world, saying that they illegally conspired to manipulate the markets to drive up costs for you and me, consumers across the world. Says Texas is not going to tolerate the illegal weaponization of the financial industry for their destructive, politicized environmental agenda. And they're saying their environmental agenda is used as a cudgel, as a way to beat your opposition into regulatory control that you can use to your advantage. They say Blackrock, Vanguard, State Street, they formed a cartel to rig the coal market to artificially reduce the energy supply, right, by attacking the coal producers to raise the energy prices so they'd make more money. Their conspiracy has harmed American energy, hurt consumers. This is a stunning violation of state and federal law, and Ken Paxton is suing to stop this. You can see he published a full press statement, but we're going to zoom in on the details and see what the lawsuit itself says. It's a bunch of states who are joining in on this, filed in the Eastern District of Texas. Seen here, we got Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, what's up, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, West Virginia, and Wyoming suing the big three: Blackrock, State Street, and Vanguard. Massive multi-billion dollars of power and market control between the three of them. So here's the complaint against them. For the past 4 years, America's coal producers have been responding not to the price signals of the free market, but to the commands of Larry Fink of Blackrock and his fellow asset managers. Now, as demand for the electricity that Americans need to heat their homes and power and their businesses has gone up, the supply of coal that is used to generate that electricity has been artificially depressed. If the supply goes down, the price will skyrocket. Now, they have reaped the rewards of higher returns, higher fees, and higher profits, while we pay higher utility bills and higher costs. Over a century ago, Congress enacted Section 7 of the Clayton Act to prohibit any acquisition of a stock where the effect of the acquisition may be to substantially lessen the competition, right? You can't buy a bunch of stock to gain an advantage against your competition, is the law. Congress recognized that when an investor brings under one control the competing companies whose stock it has acquired, it has in fact incorporated a form of an old-fashioned trust. That is anti-competitive, and it's an abomination, and federal antitrust laws absolutely prohibit them. Not allowed to do that. Now, defendants are three of the largest institutional investors in the world: Blackrock, State Street, Vanguard. Each defendant has individually acquired substantial stock holdings in every significant publicly held coal producer in the United States. They own huge portions of the coal. And this is not just coal. They do this in many industries. Each has thereby acquired the power to influence the policies of these competing companies and bring about a substantial lessening of competition in the market for coal. And each has used its power to effect a substantial reduction in competition in the coal markets. Now, considered alone and in isolation, each defendant's acquisition and use of the shareholdings violated the law. But they have not just acted alone and in isolation, no. In fact, in 2021, they went further. These companies publicly announced their commitment to use their shares of their companies to pressure the management of all the portfolio companies where they held assets to align with their net zero goals. Okay, so this is how they do it. Buy up a ton of voting power in the companies, push them to reduce the creation of coal, the production of coal, because they demand they reduce carbon emissions by over 50%. What does that do? Well, if the supply goes down, then the price of the coal that they are producing goes up. Rather than individually wield their shareholdings to reduce coal output, therefore, they collectively formed a syndicate and agreed to use their collective holdings of publicly traded coal companies to create industry-wide output reductions. Less supply, more demand, higher prices. To be sure, earlier this year, Blackrock and State Street publicly proclaimed that they withdrew from one of the organizations that they previously used to coordinate their anti-competitive conduct, which is called Climate Action 100+. But formal withdrawal from that one organization does not change the reality that their holdings shareholdings threaten to substantially reduce competition in violation of the law, nor does it negate the ongoing and future threat of their coordinated anti-competitive conduct or absolve them of their past violations. Now, below is a table that shows how their collective ownership stake exists. Blackrock, Vanguard, and State Street own huge portions of the coal produced in the United States. Peabody Energy, they own almost a third. Arch Resources, almost a third. 10% of NACO, nearly a third of Consol Energy, 29% of Alpha, Vistra's a quarter, Hallador 8%, Warrior, and Black Hills, almost a third of the company of all of them. Blackrock owns. Says you all have to reduce your output because we're going to save the planet. Guess what? Price of coal goes up for all of them. Defendants have immense influence over these companies on their own, but collectively they now possess a power to coerce management that is all but irresistible. They've used that power, by proxy voting and otherwise, to pressure the major coal producers to reduce their output, and in particular, production of thermal coal that we use to power businesses and homes. The publicly traded coal producers have responded to their influence by reducing their output, even as coal prices have risen significantly. Now, at the same time, privately held coal producers, in which defendants have no ownership stake, have been unable to increase their production sufficiently to meet the demand and capture greater market share, right? So other competitors can't be popping in here. Some of these producers are smaller firms that lack the resources, the financial wherewithal, or the production capability to raise production, and still others are unable to obtain financing from banks and institutions, okay? Because they also control them. They say, we're not going to fund your coal industry. Hey, we need more money. We need a loan because we're going to increase coal production. Sorry, you can't do that. It's going to kill the planet. So they're directly restraining competition between the companies whose shares they have acquired, but their war on competition has consequences for the entire industry. Now, the companies, these big three, have leveraged their holdings and voting shares to facilitate an output reduction scheme, which has artificially constrained the supply of coal, significantly diminished competition in the markets, and increased prices for us. This is cartel-level profits for these three. Their acquisition and the use of the shareholdings violate antitrust laws and Section 7 of federal laws, and their output reduction syndicate yielded supra-competitive profits for themselves, violated Section 1 of the Sherman Act and state antitrust laws. Now, defendants have publicly defended their anti-competitive scheme with appeals of environmental stewardship, and the liberals love it. No, they're saving the planet. But acquiring shares of common stock, the effect of which may be substantially to lessen competition, is not saved because they deem it to be beneficial. The nation's antitrust laws are not to save the planet, all right? Defendants' belief that the concern for the climate gives them some sort of a license to suppress competition is mistaken. The antitrust laws aren't excused because you think you're saving Mother Earth. Full and open competition must dictate domestic coal production. Now, in addition to joining with two other major institutional asset managers to bring about a coal production reduction, Blackrock went even further, actively deceiving investors about the nature of its funds. Rather than inform investors that it would use their shareholdings to advance climate goals, Blackrock consistently and uniformly represented its non-ESG funds, which are the environmental, social, global funds, would be dedicated solely to enhancing shareholder value. But as detailed below, Blackrock routinely violated its pledge to investors, using all its holdings to advance its climate goals, and more relevant here, its output reduction syndicate. The American consumer is entitled to enjoy the fruits of free markets, vigorous competition, and in the case of Blackrock, honest investment managers. Competitive markets, not the dictates of far-flung asset managers, should determine the price Americans pay for electricity. Here, the states, Texas plus the other 11, accordingly seek injunctive relief to put an end to Blackrock's illegal practices, to restore free and open competition to the coal markets. We want damages, we want restitution, and civil penalties. And so, a couple other highlights here. We know who the parties are. They say that these companies own everything. 46%. These 8 firms, almost half the domestic coal production, and they own a third of that. The defendants are 3 of the largest investors in global coal production in the world. Total investment from Blackrock, $108 billion. Vanguard, another $100 billion. State Street, $35 billion. They are huge. You can see these are the ownership shares that they have in most of these companies. When you add them all up, they own nearly a third of all of them. And so they've got a strong interest in making sure that their prices are maximum. They own 30.4% of Peabody, 34.9% of ART, 10% of NACO. And you see the numbers, right? We don't need to go through all of them, but they're there. The United States cannot source coal from abroad without incurring transportation costs. And it's important important. It's a very important resource for us. Now, the specific characteristics also matter. Heat value refers to a coal's energy content, moisture content. Coal is classified into 4 categories. Subbituminous coal, by the way. Did you know this? You can talk about this tonight at Thanksgiving. Hey guys, did you know that subbituminous coal contains 35 to 45% carbon and has a lower heat value than bituminous coal? You might be asked to leave dinner, but it'd be a fun fact you can share. The relevant product markets are everywhere, all right? Huge, very important. There's no rebutting the fact that they are creating a monopoly here and they're violating antitrust laws. You can see count 1 from Paxton and others says they're acquiring stock in violation of the Clayton Act. They have substantially lessened competition in the entire market, and they've done it intentionally. In 2021, they entered into unlawful agreements in restraint of trade in violation of commerce, and they used the shares to reduce the collective output of the coal. They did that through coercion and threatening removal of management, and this is a conspiracy that is unreasonably restraining trade for no legitimate justification other than to make them money and hurt us. In the spring of 21, they also engaged in another conspiracy to depress the output of all these coal companies. They engaged in a continuing agreement to share timely, competitive, sensitive information about their respective companies to meet specific output reduction targets. They identified those coal companies and they pressured them to reduce their output. They did it through their proxy voting, and the information was not aggregated nor anonymized. They were talking about specific competitors and they were reducing them across the board. So another count saying they violated state law and state antitrust claims as well. Montana coming in here. Texas coming in here. All the states are saying, West Virginia, you violated our anti-competitive laws. Deceptive trade practices will be adverse to the citizens of Texas. And so they're asking for relief from the court, saying they want a decree saying that those shares have been in violation of federal law, and then order injunctive relief as necessary, meaning maybe even divestiture, and to stop them from using the stock to give them the right to vote, to manipulate the markets, make them divest their stock, restrain them from doing what they're currently doing, grant equitable relief to restore the competitive conditions that exist, meaning the courts come in and just say, you're off that board, you're off there, those stocks are sold, you're all done. Decouple the whole thing. Should be just great. And order Blackrock to pay civil penalties of $10,000 per violation for every violation that we identify. Should be like 10 million. Award plaintiff, state, and others costs and any other relief that you deem appropriate. Signed by the great state of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, David Thompson from Cooper and Kirk, and a bunch of other lawyers along with other states supporting them. So a nice filing there from Ken Paxton and the great states versus Blackrock, State Street, and the Vanguard Corporation. And that was a very interesting lawsuit because we got to peek behind the curtain a little bit to see how they do these things. And what's so interesting is they've duped a large portion of the Democratic Party and huge swaths of the world in America into thinking that these people are out there in furtherance of the globe, in furtherance of our health. They want to stop carbon from polluting the planet. Yeah, right. It's about money and making as much of it as possible. And the people who are gobbling up their save the planet propaganda are just useful idiots that are being exploited and led to their own demise. But fortunately, we got Ken Paxton, Texas, and other states who are raising a ruckus about this. We'll keep our eye on it and see where it goes. Thanks for subscribing and joining us as we do.